You could raise a family, without the fear of the violence of the stories we're hearing today. You had opportunity. You could achieve that Canadian dream. You could buy a decent home, live in a safe neighborhood, raise your kids with your own values. That was the Canadian promise. And these guys don't give a shit.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everybody. We are joined here on Parliament Hill by a very, very significant MP. He has just announced a few days ago that he's going to be presenting a private member's bill called the Jail Not Bail Act. And the whole point of this is to undo the significant damage that the Liberal government has done to our justice system over the last 10 years. And we have constantly asked this question: how many more Canadians need to suffer a tragedy before the Liberals do something? Well, the Conservatives have answered that and said not one more, because they're going to do it for them. So joining me today is Arpan Canada. Welcome to Northern Perspective.
Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be on your very famous podcast. I was asking my team, I'm like, when do I get to go on Northern Perspective? So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for the work you're doing in holding the government accountable, but also getting the message out to our great community.
Well, it's a privilege to have you here, and it's a real honor, especially because you're presenting such a significant bill. So I don't have to ask you what led to the Conservatives putting this forward, but why do you think the Liberals have just refused to fix the mistakes that they've made that has caused this tragedy?
I think you're absolutely right. The mistakes that we're seeing are their mistakes. If you look at the Harper government, if you look before 2015, crime was actually going down. If you look at the stats, again, it's not me making them up. They're stats, Stats Canada numbers. Violent crime was down. Homicides were down. We had less people going to prison because we had a deterrence with our criminal justice system. People were afraid of the law because they knew if they got caught, they would go to jail. As soon as Justin Trudeau comes in and he brought, in 2018, he starts talking about Bill C-75. He said, you know what, the criminal system is too strong. It's not fair to certain marginalized communities. They codified something called the principle of restraint. And what that did is that it softened the laws on bail. It brought in it repealed minimum mandatory sentencing. It literally undid everything the Harper government did to have that tough on crime agenda. Look, for us, it's not about going after those small crime, petty crime. Someone makes a mistake growing up. It's not who we're targeting. It's the repeat violent offenders who have made a career of going after our communities. And so the Liberals have been hesitant because they're the ones that created the problems. They can't fix what they themselves have broken. It's like, pretending to be a firefighter when you've been the arsonist the whole time. You're responsible for burning the house down. And now you're like, you know what, I got this. We're going to fix this. They can't do it. It's an ideological divide for them. They have a history of putting the rights of criminals ahead of law-abiding Canadians. And it's a failed experiment. It's their bail reforms, the so-called bail reforms, that led us to where we are today. And so for us, we're going to change that. It's Pierre Poilievre is no bullshit. Our team is no bullshit on this issue. I've traveled across the country now. I've heard heartbreaking stories. It doesn't make sense that you are now choosing the rights of criminals over the average Canadian. So for us, this is more than just stats. It's about restoring that sanity back in our streets. We all wake up to these headlines, all these headlines where it's like, an 8-year-old killed in his mother's arms. Right, or Bailey McCord who's beat with a hammer in a parking lot after just 3 hours later before the killer was convicted and released on bail. It's insane. And you and I could sit here all day, Ryan, and just go over case by case by case by case, and the pleas from the public. And it's not just us talking about it. We have premiers. We have mayors, we have, elected officials from all different parties, the NDP, the Liberals, Conservatives. We have victim advocacy groups who are just sick and tired of this, victims and their families, law enforcement. We have police unions that are raising the alarm bells. So this is not just a political issue. I think this has now become a humanitarian crisis. The stuff we're seeing is crazy. Crazy.
And you have these families that may not otherwise have been political. They haven't been paying attention to what's been going on politically because they're just working their 2 to 3, 4 jobs trying to survive. And all of a sudden, one of these tragedies happens to them, and now they are paying attention. Um, what what have those conversations been like in hearing these families
Yeah.
go through this? In the world wasn't perfect, but they had their family, and one of these tragedies happened, and either they have a child or a family member that is either significantly injured or far worse. What what is it like, and what are they telling you?
I'll be honest, Ryan. It really breaks you. It really breaks you. And being a father myself now with 2 young kids and obviously a family of my own, and when you hear these stories, there was one I heard of that father in Vaughan, who's the brother was at our press conference. We made this announcement. A father waking up in the middle of the night to three armed violent criminals, scumbags, who put a gun to his daughter's head. And the father did what any father would do, what you would do, what I would do. And he risked his life and lost his life protecting his family. That 3-year-old that was sexually assaulted by a repeat, offender who's done that previously. And it destroys families. It destroys families. It shatters communities. And what pisses me off is that it's preventable. It is preventable. We are, the Minister of Justice jokes that, oh, this is not the wild, wild west. We're actually worse. In the wild, wild west, you could defend yourself, right? And you didn't have these guys, abusing children or, targeting women. We have now become a country that I don't recognize. I was born and raised in Canada. My parents came as immigrants in the late 70s, early 80s. They left their country because they knew Canada had a law and order. They knew there was a rule of law, that you could raise a family, without the fear of the violence of the stories we're hearing today. You had opportunity. You could achieve that Canadian dream. You could buy a decent home, live in a safe neighborhood, raise your kids with your own values. That was the Canadian promise, and these guys don't give a shit. And that's what has really pissed me off. And that's what the families are telling me as well. They're sad because they're obviously losing their family member or someone they love. I think whether crime affects you directly or it's a ripple effect, which I talked about, it affects all of us. A friend, a neighbor, someone. There's a level of anxiety now just in general. People are now investing in security cameras. They're investing in, if some neighborhoods have hired security guards to patrol the area. There's starting to become a lack of trust in the police because they think that their hands are tied. They can't do anything. They just don't trust the system. And there's also frustration building up. And my concern is that we don't want people taking the law into their own hands. I'm a lawful gun owner. I've been, I believe in the rule of law as much as possible. And what I don't want is I don't want people becoming vigilantes and trying to take over the streets and trying to protect Canadians, because we shouldn't have to, right? We should have a system that protects us. One of the number one priorities of a government of any level is to make sure their citizens are safe. So we're not seeing that, Ryan, and police are demoralized. Because when I talk to law enforcement, the amount of times they tell me that their officers are asking, why are we risking our lives every single day, arresting these guys who they have concrete evidence for? It's not like it's wishy-washy. They have concrete video evidence. The person's even admitted to them, yet they're being released before they can even finish the paperwork, right? It doesn't add up. And so that balance in the system has now gone from, respecting victims and their families to the liberal way of respecting criminals. The criminals know. They know what they're doing. They figured the system out. They know how much time they're going to get if they get caught. They know how much money they're going to make. They know all the loopholes, but the liberals allowed it. The liberals have allowed it. And so when Sean Fraser makes these stupid comments, they're so out of touch. They're so out of touch from reality, right? So I think we have to get back to the ground level. We have to talk to our grassroots. We feel their pain. The conservative leader, we've been talking about this for years, right? So for us, it's not about just, arresting the bad guys. Yeah, it is, because the damage they're doing is not just, that one incident. It's everything else that falls with it, right? Lives destroyed. You know, that 8-year-old Javaya, what did he do wrong? What was his reason for being shot and killed by a stray bullet?
Yeah.
You know, he was in his mom's arms, in bed, in his own home, getting ready for the next day. And you know, the mom's arms are supposed to be the safest place in the world in your own home. It's not, you know, he's not walking around in a rough neighborhood. He's just literally in bed, and he lost his life. So something is fundamentally wrong. And if you look at the numbers, you look at the data, you look at where the crime started changing, we're going on a downward trajectory under the Harper government. The Conservatives, it was down. As soon as Liberals came in, you could watch any graph, any stats, numbers went all the way up.
Yeah, we have a graph that we have shown repeatedly, and heartbreakingly every year where new data is actually released, it goes up and up and up and up. And we've actually color coded it so people can see what was the violent crime rate under a liberal policy versus conservative versus liberal. And it's night and day, which comes back to
hug a thug policies. They literally hug a thug policies.
Which comes back to you know, a very good discussion that I think it would be difficult for the liberals to argue against, but it's all about correlation and causation. So you have the tough on crime policies that the Conservative government put in place under Harper, and we saw a dramatic fall of violent crime. And you look at where things were under the Liberals, and I would love to ask Justin Trudeau and sit down with him and say, okay, so how do you explain the rise of violent crime, given that this only took a massive spike after your justice reforms? How do you explain that otherwise?
Yeah, well, and you might not get an answer for that because they're not very logical. Liberals and logic don't go hand in hand, right? So, and the problem is, it's not just a Trudeau problem. It's a problem we're seeing with this so-called new government, new prime minister. It's the exact same ministers. It's the exact same team. It's the exact same ideology. And so when they're telling us, oh, we have bail reform coming, you did bail reform. You messed it up. And what, you're going to undo everything you did? They're not going to do that. So that's why when I brought my bill forward, we traveled across the country, we sat down with law enforcement, we sat down with victim groups, Crowns, Defense, right across this country. And Larry Brock and I and Frank Caputo and others, we worked together on this. We wanted to make sure we had some sound policy. And we came up with something, you know, we're not trying to be hyper-partisan here. This is not a partisan issue. This is, we'll put our politics aside. We actually want to work with the government and get this thing passed. Because every day that goes by, Ryan, every single day, there's 1,600 violent crimes that happen in Canada. 1,600. And the same people are getting arrested, released, arrested, released. I'm not sure if you saw the stat in Kelowna. The same 15 were arrested 1,500 times in 1 year. The same 15.
And you got to wonder, what would the crime rate be in Kelowna if those guys were actually locked up the first time?
Lock the 15 up. You'll see a drastic decrease. And the Harper government, you saw that. Under Conservative, you saw that. We actually closed down 2 prisons because the law was such a deterrent. You know, we talk about law and order. If the laws are soft and the criminals know, there's no consequences.
But the other problem, I think, that is encouraging crime has been as a result of all of the other liberal policies, because under the Harper government, I think one of the other reasons why there wasn't as much crime is because there was opportunity.
Absolutely.
And people, you know, you could make a good living, you could live in a good house, and you could raise a family.
That's right.
Now, people are barely able to afford food. You can't afford a home, you can't afford a car, you can't, you know, there's families across the country, they're in tears because they can't afford to have kids.
Yeah.
So it's almost a double whammy, because you have people that are not afraid of the justice system, but you also have people that seem to be resorting to desperation because they feel they have no other option.
And that's a growing problem for us, and we are concerned about that. The social factors and the economic factors that do exist around that, right? We have 20% of young men that are unemployed right now in the latest stats, right? So that is a concern. So but the crime that we're seeing done now, from what the stats are showing us, are organized crime, repeat offenders, people that are in the system, that know the system, that are now using it to push their own agenda. The police, you know, when the police are telling us that the public should comply, I think it was in New York region. The cop said, if somebody comes in, don't do anything, just comply. The criminals are taking notes of that. They know that, look, if the police officials to comply, if the public to comply,
my job just got easier.
It's so much easier, right? Or leave your keys
at
the front door. Well, should we just leave them in the car? Say, here's a car, here's some cookies for you, here's some milk. Come rob my car.
Yeah.
I think that mindset has to change in our country. It's the mindset from all levels of government. But what I want to highlight over and over again is that this could be prevented. These lives that we have lost and the devastation that we have seen, it doesn't have to be this way. And that's why we are calling on all parties to work with us. This will be a bipartisan issue, hopefully. Our reforms are that we're trying to reverse the Liberals did are common sense. Nothing complicated, simple stuff that makes total sense. And I hope that they stand with us. Otherwise, Canadians will judge them. And I hope everyone watching sign our petition. We do have a call to action going on right now. If you go to my website, arpincanada.ca, you'll see the first petition. Help me sign that. Let's get the message out. We want you to call your local MP if you live in whether you're conservative riding or a Liberal or NDP. Write an email, give them a phone call. Put that political pressure on, because when we don't speak up, they do what they want. Hit them where it hurts, their votes. Right? So if they start getting hundreds of emails and phone calls from their constituents saying, crime is a priority for me, this Jail Not Bail Act will help, repeal your bail reforms and restore safe streets again, let's do it. And third, obviously, is share your stories, right? I think it's so important that victims have been silenced for too long. They're like, yeah, you're done. They get lost in the process. They get lost in the headlines. I want to hear those stories. And I want to amplify those stories. And Frank does, and so does Larry, and I know you guys do as well. So let's show Canadians what's actually happening. Sometimes the best way to get rid of the dirt is to shine light on it. And so for us, we will continue that, and we'll be starting our town halls. We'll be going across the country, doing meet and greets, raising our concerns, taking that feedback so we can bring back safe streets for all Canadians.
Do you have any sense as to when you're going to be able to actually present the bill for first reading yet?
So we're waiting for a certified copy. This week, we are hoping to have that back, and it'll be put on notice. I have to table it by the 23rd of September. So it's within this week. I have to do it. So we're ready. We're waiting for the formal process to begin. And once that happens, we will be reaching out to other parties and hopefully build those coalition of support. We have lots of endorsements going to be rolled out in the next week as well. So the public is on our side. Canadians are on our side. That's what makes our job easy, is that this is an issue that Canadians are united on. They understand the consequences. And we just got to make sure that we pass this legislation. It's so important.
And, some politicians may go through their careers feeling that they haven't really had an impact, or they haven't had an opportunity to be a part of a piece of legislation that is significant. What does it say to you that this piece of legislation has come under your watch, and you have an opportunity, and any of the other opposition parties that vote for it have an opportunity to vote for this, to literally, and this is not, not pedantic, this is not anecdotal, this literally means saving lives.
Look, I think anyone that runs for elected office probably does it for the right intentions. I think the sacrifices aren't, minor. You're away from your family, you're from your kids. I personally, I tell you from my perspective, I didn't run this for a job. I ran this because of calling. I knew that if I do this job right, like you said, I could save lives, I could make some impact. And that's what drives me and my team every single day, is that how can we make the lives of Canadians better? I want to be judged when I leave this place. I want to be judged for the work I've done. How hard did I work? Did I deliver any results? Did I care about my community? It's a public service. At the end of the day, we are public servants. We are not anything special. We're here to serve the people that put us here, our constituents, Canadians. So every step of the way, that's my mentality when I operate, when I'm in the community, in my riding in Oxford County, when I'm on the ground here in Ottawa. Am I leaving a legacy, or am I leaving the country better when I first took it, and then when I leave? I want to be one of those MPs that, I can say back and say, I tried my best. I did the best I could for Canada, and whoever wants to take over next, it's on them. So when you bring legislation like this, and again, a lot of caucus members from my team have supported this, so I want to thank them for stepping up and sharing intel and sharing information and being a part of the process. it warms your heart. It gives you that reason, that drive to keep on fighting. Because some days in Ottawa, not only is it cold in the winter, the rhetoric sometimes does get depressing. You feel like, why am I doing this? But it's moments like this you realize what you're doing it for, and who you're doing it for. And again, it's also for my kids' future. I want them to have the same opportunities I did. That ability to be, go to school, get a good education if they're like, get a decent job, buy a home, get married. That's what I was given. My parents worked extremely hard. Nothing was given to them. Not a single day of handouts. They busted their ass. They worked double shifts. I was picking strawberries with them growing up to make ends meet. But you're able to have an honest living, give back to the community, and you're proud of that, the hard work. And that's what we're fighting for every step of the way. That's what drives me. Because right now we lost that. We've lost it. And I want Arvin and Avon to say, you know what? We could do something in this country without the fear of being shot in your own bed, or being, harassed or kidnapped, or all the crazy stuff we're saying. So that's what we're fighting for. And, God willing, we're going to pass this bill.
So Canadians, be a part of that positive change. Write to your MP, write to other MPs that of the other opposition parties. Tell them that they need to earn your vote in the next election, and they can only do that by voting for this bill. And you can find the petition link in the description and in the first comment of this video. And you can also find a link to the House of Commons website that will take you to where you can find the contact information for all of the members of Parliament there. Because the more letters Canadians send, the more involved that you get, the more possibility we have of this bill actually passing, and you can be a part of historic positive change.
And Ryan, just to end, I just want to say, don't lose hope. I think Canadians, I know things are tough right now. I think times are tough right now, economically, socially, obviously in our neighborhoods, crime. Don't lose faith in Canada. Canada is not some soft country that will just roll over. We are a great, proud nation with great people, with great values, with great traditions. It's worth fighting for. And so join our team, fight with us. The more united we get, the more louder we get, the more vocal we get, the more we all get active in politics. It's important because we don't want to lose our country, and things will get better. I can tell you that things will get better. This is still fixable. We haven't lost our country just yet, but there's lots of work we have to do. So keep fighting. Be positive, reach out to all of us. We're there as a big conservative family. We're ready to work hard, and we're not going to quit. And I know Pierre was back in the House this week for the first time as well. He has made it clear he is not quitting because he believes in each and every Canadian that not only voted for us, but are still looking for us as a government in waiting. So I do appreciate your time, Ryan. It means the world that you're able to come into Ottawa, and welcome to Ottawa. To see democracy live in action. But we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting every step of the way.
Mr. Khanna, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Ryan.